So today I'm going to show you how to create a payment batch. So payments in Wastedge are entered through batches, and batches effectively represent different styles of payments usually. So for example, you may have customers walking into your branch with money, cash money that you may want to process. You might want to process that in one batch, so it's easy to reconcile at the end of the day. You may have a pile of checks that you've received for a day, and those payments you want to take to the bank, and you want to have a very clear separate batch for those payments put together. So you might create a check batch for a day, and maybe you want to do the same thing for reconciliation of a bank statement from the previous day. You could have multiple batches open during a day per user, and therefore reconcile each one of those payment types separately. So how to create a payment batch in Wastedge? You go to Customers, Accounts Receivable, and then here in the left hand panel you have AR Payment Batch. And when you click on that, you'll see a list of all your batches. In this case, I'm an administrator. I see all users' batches, but most users would only see their own batches. And you'll see open and closed batches. When a batch has been posted to Accounts Receivable, and I'll show you how to do that, there will be a C, and it'll be won't be shown in here anymore. You can filter it out by using the filter options. So to create a new batch, click on the white page icon. If you have multiple branches set up, you can select which branch you're posting money for. I'll select my first branch. Now the statement date is a date that should reflect the date that the money was received on. So effectively on the customer statement, if you produce one from Wastedge, it'll be shown as the statement date, so the date that the money was received on. Now the description, you would put in, for instance, cash payments that were received today. Click on Save Changes, and the system will automatically take you back to your batch list. And today is the 4th of December. That's the batch I've just created. Now you'll see it would have assigned it a batch ID, which is basically just a batch number consisting of the financial period that you're posting in, the year to period, and then a sequential number. So how to start entering payments into this batch then? You click on the actual batch ID, and it'll take you to the AR Payment Batch screen, and you'll have buttons here across the top. Now, one of these buttons is called Payment Entry. So click on Payment Entry to start processing payments into this new batch. Now, what this allows you to do is to basically either enter a customer number or look it up. If I know the customer number by heart, I can just type it in, customer number 2 for instance, and if I press tab, it'll automatically come up with a list of their outstanding invoices and potentially payments that have been placed on account that haven't been assigned to invoices yet. These green entries are payments on account or credit balances, and the red are invoices. So what we're doing here is cash entry, so cash posting is perfectly fine, and you'd want to select the payment method. These are customizable by you, but effectively you select, in this case this is a cash batch, so you select cash. Now you might have issued a receipt when a person came into the office. You can enter the receipt number, so the person has a reference. It's automatically come up with my general ledger account. It's not mandatory, but if you do use the Wastedge general ledger, it should auto-populate the general ledger account number. Statement description will be what the customer sees on the invoice or statement that they receive from you. So you can type in something like payment received, thank you. And you can then type in the amount that you're paying. So let's say they've paid $651. When you press tab, it'll tab out of this field and show you the unallocated amount here as $651. Now I happen to have an invoice here that matches that amount exactly. In fact, the original amount was a little bit higher. But the outstanding amount is $651. And if you basically just tick the box here, that will set this amount here to $651, and that says the unallocated amount is now 0. That basically applies money to that particular invoice, and you press save and move on to the next customer that paid. You can use the lookup here too to look for customers if you have a name, if you have their address, if you may have an alternate ID to search them by. So this is the normal customer search, so you can basically select a customer from here, and that should bring up their outstanding open invoices. This customer doesn't have any. And where this is also handy is to look for things that you currently may be looking for, information that may be available at the payment time that you wouldn't normally look the customer up under, ACNs, ABN numbers, those types of things. To search, you just click on the magnifying glass. That'll bring up the search filters, and you can type in any of their details. I'll show you another example. If you're processing cash and it's insufficient money, so let's say it's only $100 that you're paying, and you're trying to apply to a much larger invoice, for instance, in this case, what will happen is the system will automatically recognize that there are not enough funds to cover that particular invoice. So it's going to partially allocate the payment. And you can see automatically here it's only applied $100 because that's all it had available. And if you then press save, it applied that money. That works for overpayments too. So if you have an overpayment, I'll give you an example here where we're paying $200 and we're paying it against, for instance, this invoice, which only has $60 outstanding. It'll only apply to $60, which is the outstanding amount for that invoice. Now I've left some money here unallocated. If I press save, what will happen is it will automatically record that money as a prepayment on account. It'll become a prepayment transaction. So that's how normal cash payment works. There's a slight variation if you're doing check payments. I'll show you how this works, even though this is a cash batch. You'll get some extra fields over here on the right hand side. So check payments allow you to put in a reference number, the check number, and then put in the bank name. So for instance, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, the branch, Sydney, and whoever the actual payee is on the check. That could be a different name than the customer number. It could be that a doctor is paying for the invoice for a medical center, for instance. So a completely different name on the check than there is on the actual invoice or on the customer's account. This information here can also be stored against the customer under their Accounts Receivable Accounting Details tab. I'll show you where that lives. So here under customers, if we just go into an existing customer, under the accounting details, you're able to store bank name, branch, and drawer, and that will mean that if that customer pays with check all the time, he'd usually pay from the same bank with the same details on it, and it'll automatically default in there. And checks effectively work the same way as other payments. It could be that it was $150. In this case, this is there's no invoices outstanding for this customer, so this is not a cash posting, because a cash posting in Wastedge terms means you have to allocate it to an existing invoice. This is actually a prepaid credit. So then you press save and it recognizes it as a prepayment. What it's also going to do is it's going to give you warnings if you're paying against customers who may be on credit hold at the moment. So customers who are on credit hold, if I go back to the customer record, are fairly easy recognizable if you have the status column shown in the customer screen. They're ones with a status of C, and if I click on one of those, they're pretty easily highlighted here with a big yellow bar saying credit hold. So if you were to pay against that customer, you would get a message saying that you received a payment from a customer that's on credit hold, and whether you want to make that customer active or not. So now that we've processed a few payments, what we can do is review our payments into this batch. So you click on review/update, and it presents you with the overview of the payments that you've been processing. So I've processed a few cash payments against Bondi Diggers with a couple of different reference numbers, or a few different reference numbers, and it shows you here what the overall payment was and where I allocated it. So in this case, for instance, I had $200 and I only part applied that to an invoice, and the remainder of it went in as a prepayment, and then I processed the check as a prepayment. You can see that you can process multiple payment methods in the same batch. It does not have a problem with that whatsoever. The way to then apply this to the customer's account is to post to AR. Before you do that, you might want to run some reports just to see and validate that the data is correct, that you're happy with how it's been processed. And you can run them directly from here. So there's a journal export. And what that will do is open up this pop-up window. All these reports will come out in a CSV format, so they should open up in Excel. We'll just give it a second. So this will have two links in it, the log file and the CSV. If you click on the CSV, it'll open up a journal. And this journal has all the details in it of the payments that we've just been processing. So which customer it was, how much the amount was, etc., etc. If you do have General Ledger's account set up, it'll give you the overall code summary and the detailed information in relation to it. And then per what we call statement code in Wastedge, it'll start breaking down per payment method how much you've actually been processing. So that's handy for posting at the end of the day in a secondary general ledger system, for instance. You can also produce a deposit listing from here. Click on deposit listing, and it'll take a second to come up. You should always get these pop-up windows come up. If you don't, you may have a pop-up blocker set up. So you should add your server to the list of exceptions for Wastedge. So if I click on this link, it'll then open up the deposit listing. You can use that to process payments and take them to the bank. Once you're done and you're happy with the overall results, once your reconcile total matches whatever you've got in here as the total amount, you click on Post to AR, and then it should come back saying that it's successfully posted, and come back with the General Ledger Postings overview. You can then go back to the batch list, and you should notice that the batch that I've just created, this one here, that batch is now being completed.